welcome everyone who's tuning in. Thank you so much. I am going to hand it off to Janet to introduce herself. I'm her assistant, and we have just started this is our third video blog interview.
Hi, I'm Janet Ames. I am a realtor with Keller Williams Mainline Realty. I've been in the business for going on 17 years and was a CPA prior to getting into real estate. I am here today to introduce my guest, Dayton Duncan, who I met many years ago in my career, and we've been working together since. He is an electrical engineer by day, and it also has a real estate empire he's been building both as a landlord and as a fixer flipper. So Dayton, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me on to have the talk.
Absolutely. We're excited to talk to you a little bit. I've read your book on, I think it was the landlording. It really is enlightening, and it takes it step by step in a way that is understandable for someone who is just starting. So I know you've been flipping properties for a while now, and you began when you were in college in Temple. You have classes for people who want to get involved and books for people who want to get involved. So what really sparked your interest in getting into this industry?
Wow, first of all, thank you for the book. I'm glad you liked it. That's the entire intent behind doing it. It was for anyone getting started, to give you that kind of very regimented, very actionable methodology of how to get from point A to point B to point Z. Mm-hmm. And that was the goal. It was for anyone who's interested, give them a playbook of how they could get started. So I did get started at Temple, and you're fresh. You want to do this for whatever crazy reason in your head. You want to get into this high risk business. There isn't very much out there for you, at least not when I got started, over a decade ago, that gave you that clear step-by-step way to navigate through this whole thing. Most of it was trial and error. To your question, why I wanted to get started? Yeah. Well, there was, it's just something that was always there. It was something that was always in me. I enjoy renovations. I enjoy fixing up houses. I enjoy from the standpoint of construction in general. I mean, that's what I do by day. That's my day job, the electrical engineering. I'm a transmission engineer. We do the same thing. It's construction projects. So we take an idea, we put it to paper, and then we take it through the construction process to get it through fruition. It's exactly the same satisfaction that I get from flipping a house or from turning over a rental and creating this new space for a family to live. I'd say it's a little more satisfying because there's a direct impact to community. There's a direct impact to people that you can see. And for me, that's exciting. I had this lofty goal when I got to Philadelphia. I wanted to change what the landscape, the communities looked like in Philadelphia. I went to Temple. If anyone's familiar with the North Philadelphia, Temple area, it's not the best area. One, obviously, students was a market. But two, I saw that the communities just needed help. And, not to make it sound so lofty, but I felt like that's a way, by turning over neighborhoods, you can do your part to kind of revitalize and really make everything beautiful again, one house at a time.
Yeah.
So,
and you lived in your first rental, right?
If you're going to try to set yourself up in the best way to win, especially with your first rental, when you're learning how to be a landlord, you're learning how to do these repairs, you don't want to take on more than you can handle. So one of the, again, I say the house hacking thing, which I think is overused at this point, but it is. If you buy a multifamily or a multi-bedroom house that you can use as a rooming house, you can live in one of the units while you rent the others. So that takes a lot of the risk off because you need to live somewhere. You would be paying your typical housing fees to whether it's to rent or whether it's to a mortgage. You would have been doing that anyway. So this kind of softens the blow while you learn how to get tenants.
So how did you finance your first property? And what are the options that are available to people who are looking to be landlords or do a fix and flip? Because that's different than just buying conventionally for yourself.
Absolutely. So depending on what your intent is for the property, you're going to look at a different financing option, right? So if I'm looking to hold something long-term like a rental, then I'd be looking for a more traditional approach mortgage to purchase that property. If I was doing something in the short term, like a flip project, then you're not looking for that same type of structure. You're looking for some financer that can close the deal quick, get you the funds to purchase and do your repairs, and then sell. So whether that's a construction loan, which usually you can fuse into construction and acquisition costs, whether it's a hard money lender, whether it's your own cash, whatever it would be that you're going to attack the project, you need something that can get you cash in hand to present to a buyer quick. Of course, if someone's going to give you that money, that high risk comes with a high interest payment. So you hear a lot of the folks who are involved in, flip projects talking about their interest rates, and every day we're losing money. Well, that's because you're getting taxed on that money that you borrowed aggressively every single day. So you have to be really concise with your timeline to make sure that works. Borrowing that money will work for your overall goal. That can be a tough game to navigate. So when you're doing a flip project, really cash is going to be your primary way to do it. So I know right there, I probably scared off half of your viewers saying that. And while that is a scary notion to come up with the cash to purchase a property, it's not impossible. I was able to generate cash, and when you hear the word investor, a lot of people think of some billionaire who you have to know and you need to schmooze this guy to give you a big check. Mm-hmm. Oh, your friends and your family can be your biggest investors, your biggest supporters. As long as you have thought through what the plan is, it's not hard to convince somebody to buy into your goal and help support you with that financially. And that's exactly what I did over the years. If I wanted to go after a project that I didn't have the cash for, I would present it to family and friends, pool money, and then we'd go after the project and purchase it. And then obviously on the back end, when I sold it, I'd pay them back. You'd come up with some structure of what they would make on their money. A lot of times a flip project is going to pay them more than what a traditional bank or savings account would pay them. So, really, it's not impossible to generate cash. You really want to tap into your own personal network and let people know what you're doing and tell them the kinds of projects you're going to be going after, get them comfortable with that, and you'd be surprised how many people would be on board with that.
Along those same lines, I wanted to continue with the networking. You talk a little bit about contacts that you should have that make your job a little bit easier as you're moving forward in this process. Sure. So who are some of the contacts that you should be making?
So there's a few. The first one I'd say try to solidify as your realtor, right? Your realtor is just a person who you're going to be working with probably the closest and the most. You're going to be bouncing ideas off of. You're going to be talking about target areas that you're thinking about. Your realtor has the day-to-day knowledge of what communities are doing, where trends are headed, what community profiles look like. That's what you guys do. That's your job. That's every day you're in it. As an investor, I try to immerse myself in it as much as I can, but there's no way I could rival what you already know about.
I have a new area for you.
When this is done, I'd love to hear about it. But in serious, that's the benefit of that person, that resource. And it needs to be, and it's a relationship. It really is. And you need to be able to work with that person. They need to understand how you work. And, it's that marriage that will make the process of finding a house, going after a house, securing a house, back end selling a house, makes that whole process simple, smooth, and seamless. My first realtor I had before Janet, it wasn't that relationship. And I was young. I was the first one I was going after. I didn't know how much of a resource a realtor could be. So I tell folks now, make sure you go through and make sure you're comfortable with your realtor. Make sure they know what you want and they can work with you. Because, my first experience was terrible. Thankfully I got through. I got the house, and, and after that, I never used him again. I told him outright at the closing table, this is our last time we're going to see each other. And then I met Janet shortly after. That's your first resource, and you would go through, and I would do it kind of like a speed dating thing. Go through interviews and go around, meet these folks. A lot of folks, if you're going through properties on your own online, they have realtors associated with those properties. That's how you guys will get new clients. So as you, the viewer who's looking to get involved, reach out to those realtors, have the discussion, and ask them what they've done. Ask them what kind of areas they've worked in. Make sure that coincides with what you're looking for. But that's the biggest one. Beyond that, there's a lot of other contacts that you'll need to make. That most of that I try to do by reference. That would be, banks, knowing who to talk to at different banks. Because honestly, if you go through the online portal at most banks, you won't even get a response. So it really helps to know who that loan officer is at, this bank or this trust or that, organization, so that you can go directly to them and have the conversation, build the relationship. And then the financing part is easy after that, once they know who you are and what you're doing.
Depending upon what you're doing. So you may have one that does conventional stuff with you, one that does things that are for purchasing a rental, whereas a hard money lender is going to be a whole different thing, and a construction loan is going to be somebody else. So you may need more than one lender depending upon what it is you're trying to do.
Absolutely. I don't think you should limit yourself to one lender at all. Absolutely. That you couldn't have said that better. I mean, I have a different set of lenders for whatever it is I'm looking to do. I mean, and I've built the contacts, built the relationships. There's, I have my favorite go-to banks. I mean, for single families versus a flip project that I'll go to and request money from, depending on what the project is. I don't even approach some if I know that this isn't their type of project that they like to finance. You'll want to talk to other investors, or talk to your realtor, or talk to, if you're going after a traditional financer, talk to them and say, hey, what else have you seen folks do? Those are the, I guess, big ones to get you started to acquire a property. And there's a whole long laundry list of people you need on the back end to help fix properties, but that's a whole nother blog post.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit now. With COVID-19, all of us in real estate and everywhere else are feeling, the effects are starting to happen slowly. And I'm just wondering what your feeling is so far of what's going on in the markets, and how it maybe is affecting you already in what you do.
When people are afraid to go outside and they're afraid to continue business as usual, there's going to be a huge blowback from that. So it's unfortunate that's where the landscape is, but that kind of has so many cascading effects. I mean, there's not just one thing to point at. I guess. So
you're in a deal right now.
Yep.
Have you seen any effects already in terms of the process getting slowed down because of issues with title and financing? And
so thankfully the process didn't slow, because I started the process probably a month prior to most of the I say government restrictions that we had. So we were past all that at the time we were where we were in the process. We were past all of the back and forth and I'd say in-office stuff that had to happen.
Right.
But the one effect that did hit me with that deal was the interest rate. And so that was one of the things I was going to mention to you there was when you have an economic collapse like that, well, interest rates go higher. And again, it's what's going on with the public has a direct impact on what happens to the financial market. If people are afraid to go out, people aren't spending money. People aren't spending money, or people can't work, and you expect big layoffs, which we've already seen big layoffs because people can't get to work. Folks who are lucky enough to work from home, thankfully, me and my family were able to do that. But folks who aren't that lucky, then they don't show up. They end up getting fired, or they don't bring in a paycheck because they're not putting in their 40 hours if they're working hourly. If that's the case, they can't pay rent or they can't pay for their mortgage. Mortgage companies, banks are going to react in that they expect to have folks that aren't going to be meeting their commitments. Interest rates are going to go higher. And that's exactly what happened. So for my deal, where I should have gotten an interest rate in the 3s, my interest rate was well into the 4s, and it was damn near 5. I had to continue to put money to try to whittle that down to get something that was palatable. And for folks who aren't familiar with where good interest rates are, if you've got good credit and you've got longstanding history and your debt to income, all the different criteria that they look at, a good interest rate for an investment property should be around 4%. So, I was expecting something around there, and 0.5% increases are significant. So the fact that they were considering anything near 5% was ridiculous. But that's where we are. And that's where everyone's going to see, even for people just buying their first home for them and their family. They'll see the exact same impact. So you'll see, but to me, that's, I guess, from my standpoint, from the investor side, that's what I see. From the landlord side, I have to just be mindful that if my tenants fall into a group that can't meet their commitments and pay their rent, I might have to carry that property. So as a landlord, whether or not times are good or bad, you should have some reserves ready to take on mortgages if you're not getting money from your tenants. Expect that. You can only do so much to vet people out to try to get good tenants into a property, but you need to be prepared for if things go bad. And that's kind of where we're at. So we'll see. But
yeah, you kind of led us into our next question, which is how are you adjusting to these changes? Because obviously you're affected and everyone's affected. But do you have any ideas or solutions for people who are landlords or who are flippers who are in kind of taking on these changes or trying to adjust? You said having a reserve as a landlord is always a good idea because you need to be able to carry that property. But maybe some business ideas moving forward that can kind of, you can set yourself up now that you have some time that you're working from home. Like what are you doing to be proactive now?
For sure. Well, there's a few things. One, all the paperwork, all the stuff that you research, or looking at areas, that kind of stuff, just as a landlord, things you can do while you're not out there. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. Start educating yourself on something where you said, I was just mentioning interest rates. If I was a guy who didn't understand that, now's a good time to do the research to get to know what impacts that. What do you need to do to your own personal financial situation to set yourself up to get the best interest rate from banks? So there's just because you're in your home doesn't mean that there's nothing you can do.
I know you post some DIY stuff on your social media and your blog, and with people being at home right now, are there things that they can be thinking about doing at home if they're thinking, about selling their house, getting it flipped, or just to kind of keep themselves busy until they can move on?
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot. All the things that we all say, yeah, I'll get to that. I've got my to-do list for my house that I keep on the wall that one day I'll get to. This is the time. This is that day. There's no better time than now to go and target those types of things. And that can be the little maintenance nuisance things, like there's a window that had been not closing right. Maybe you need to make an adjustment, or all the way to something major, like we've been talking about painting the second floor. Well, now's a good time. You might be able to tackle painting the second floor. But the big couple things, and I'll just mention two now that folks are at home. If we're given the landscape of what we're talking about in the crisis of the COVID and the exposure to just dust and germs, make sure everyone is checking and changing your filters. You probably don't spend a lot of time in your house. That's the one thing that I've kind of been advocating to folks, because it's easy to forget that. So take the filter out. At this point, I would spend the extra dollars and get one that's high allergen so that it can block all of the extra stuff, because that's going to help you to stay healthy during this time. That's usually when you get a nuisance cough or a sneeze or something like that, probably because there's dust around your home. And the first place I would attack that is my filter. And then check your all of your fire alarms and your carbon monoxide detectors. Just go around and hit the buttons, make sure the batteries are charged. We're in our houses now, and you're cooking probably more than you have ever cooked in your home, doing more laundry probably than you've ever done in your home. So those two things, those could be issues.
Clean out your lint filter.
That was the next thing. When I was mentioning laundry, that was the next thing. You're on top of it. Clean the lint trap. and make sure your vent hose is clear and clean of lint as well. Those are places where fires can start. So again, if you're washing your curtains, which is a good idea, washing all your bed linens, a good idea. You're going to be doing that hopefully regularly now. So those are things you want to tackle. But as far as to your point about things to get ready for, maybe you were thinking about putting your house up for spring market, just some quick things that I would always do. It sounds cliche, but a fresh coat of paint can sell a house. You've seen people who, if you follow any other flippers or folks on social media that kind of show you that they're kind of bragging. Look, all I did, this one was listed at 80K and I'm selling it for 200K and all they did was paint. I mean, but really, painting flooring will change the entire complexion of a home. And people, when they're buying a house, as an investor, you're looking at all the mechanicals and doing a deeper dive. But the majority of people going to buy a house, they're sold just by what they see when they walk in. So if you put down a new floor and paint your walls, people come in with this false impression that everything is great, even if behind the walls it might not be. So I'm not saying to skimp on the stuff behind the walls, but what I am saying is the importance of that first impression, which paint and flooring will add to that. That's unparalleled. That feeling you get when you walk into a home, I mean, it truly is love at first sight sells a home. You walk into it and you immediately feel that connection or you don't. And if you don't, you're going to tear down, you're going to find a reason not to like everything else as you're walking through a home.
Well, I wanted to end with just a positive note. I have been asking people, what are the two things that you are feeling gratitude for today?
Well, you know what, that's an easy one. I would say it's my family and my health, and the health of my family, I would say all of our health. Thankfully, like I mentioned to you, everybody's got like a little sore throat, but we all have allergies. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So knock on wood, I don't think it's anything more serious than that. But I am grateful that we're all here together and that we're all happy and in good spirits.